Learn about Gemara. Today's daf is daf Ayin Vav. We sort of stopped right in the bottom of the page of Ayin Hey Amad Beis, 2 lines from the bottom. So we said that Sumchus said that the 2 witnesses that said that he stole it. We had this whole elaborate thing. 2 witnesses that he stole it, and we won't go into all the details. And then another 2 witnesses that he shechted it, and so on. He admits to the fact that he stole it, but not that he shechted it. So we say that the witnesses who said that he stole it, they have to pay kefil, and then he pays the dal or he does, depending on the case. So the Gemara in the bottom just alerts us to Amamar. You said before, the very bottom of the page, Ayin Hey Beis, Hein Mishal Mit Tashlume Kefil. He said before that the first witnesses who turned out to be liars have to pay kefil, the double, because the rule is whatever they intended to do, the harm they intended to do, they have to carry it, they have to pay for it. And the only question is, we're talking about a case where the person himself, the accused, is saying, yes, he was murdered, I stole it. The only thing he said was, you guys weren't there at the time, whatever it is, it was another group of Adam. But he is murdered. So if he was murdered, why in the world do these Adam have to pay Keren and Kefil? It sounds like from there they pay the principal and the double. The double they pay because when he was murdered, you don't pay the double, and you wanted him to pay the double. But the principal, he said, I owe the principal. So he was going to pay it anyway. So why would the witnesses be punished something which anyway he's going to pay? Ask the Gemara, they're gonna he has to pay the Keren. Why are the witnesses paying that as well? The false witnesses. Tani learn tashlum the kefil. All they pay is the kefil, or they complete the payment by paying the kefil. You're right. The person who confessed, he pays the principal, the ganav himself, and they pay the penalty, the additional penalty of double. Okay, we're up to the top of the page with 2 dots. In the Mishnah, it says that what happens if he stole the animal and he made it hektish. And then afterwards, so the hegdish seems to be effective. The fact that he made a hegdish worked. And then afterwards, he goes ahead and he shechts it or he sells it. He pays the double, but he does not pay the 4 or 5 times. He does not pay the 4 or 5 times. Why doesn't he pay the 4 or 5 times when he shechted it? Because it no longer belongs to the original owner. It now belongs to hegdish. And says the guna beis ish. So anyway, so therefore you don't pay. You don't pay for that. Then we had Reb Shimon that came along and said that if it's karbonis that you took a responsibility for, you have to pay 4 or 5. If you took a responsibility, it's like yours. The person, the original nignav, took a responsibility. The victim. He, what do you call it? We'll see in a minute what we're talking about here. But let's say the person who made it a carbon said that I'm taking responsibility. If this animal dies, I'll replace it with another animal. Then he has to pay 4 or 5 times. We treat it as if it's still the owner. If he takes no responsibility, it transferred into the Hegdish realm, and therefore you're punished. So now the Gemara will explain. Amri, let's say, I understand why you don't have to pay for the shechting. Why? Because whose animal did you shecht? Hegdish's. The Hegdish got tavach. You shecht an animal of Hegdish, and how do I know that? Because we said that you made it hegdish, which means that the hegdish was effective. The only way the hegdish can be effective is if you abandon the original guy, the victim. It was Mayayish. He abandoned hope of ever recovering it. And since the guy was Mayayish, it transfers over to hegdish. It now belongs to the realm of hegdish. If your whole yish is not koine, how does it become the property of hegdish? Because we said before, we first start off saying because Yush and Shini Rishus, or Yeush and Shini Rishus, and they both happen in tandem. What's the Shini Rishus? The fact that I labeled it, I nominated Hegdish, and when does that happen? Only when it becomes Hegdish. So the Shini Rishus and the effectiveness of it both happen at the same time. Normally we say, okay, Yush Rishus, the Lekech buys it now, it's his, and the Lekech sells it, turns around to whatever he wants it. It's no problem. Here we're saying the only way it became his is because of Shini Rishus. And the only reason why it's considered Shini Rishus is because it became his. So it both happened at the same time. The only reason why it became Hegdish is because it's considered Shini Rishus. But the only reason why it's Shini Rishus is because it became Hegdish. So as the Rajba says, we imagine that one happened before the other. That was before the Samach Zayin. And therefore it happens together. So there's years of Shini Rishus that belongs now to Hegdish. So you don't pay. No. We're talking about the case here. We're talking about either because Stam Geneva, we learned before. Stam Geneva years Bailim, he gave up hope. He doesn't know who stole it. How does he know? So he gave up hope. Okay, so it became proper Hegdish. So therefore, when you shechted it, whose animal did you shecht? You shechted animal Hegdish, and not the original owner. That's why you don't pay for it. Fine. Ella Hegdish, get Hegdish, Kotava, Veloid, the Mother Kotava. Ella, a Hegdish, Lechaye, Belachaydem. When you sold it to Hegdish, it should be Chaye, because Mali, what about the Etzim Hegdish itself? When you made that Shinur Rishus, that's this tantamount to selling it. What's selling? Selling is transferring the item from one person to another person. You're telling me that the activity I did after I cannot sell it, obviously, once it belongs to Hegdish. But you're telling me that the shchita that I did after it came Hegdish, I'm potter because I shechted Hegdish's animal. Okay, so the transfer to Hegdish was a valid transfer. Isn't that Mechira? That in itself is tantamount to selling it. I can give it away as a gift. If I gave it as a gift, it's just like Mechira. So what's the difference here? Is Ela Hegdish l'chayiv, the etzim Hegdish you made should be chayiv. Mali mochel hedyin, mali mochel shemayim. What's the difference? Who you transferred it? The fact that you transferred out of the victim's rishus. Says Gemara Hamani Rab Shimon. You know this din of the Mishnah must follow Rab Shimon. What does Rab Shimon say? The Amadi says, "Kochim shechayi b'achliusin." Any kochim you take upon yourself that you're responsible for. B'shusi the mori karka. Rab Shimon says, if you say, for example, Harei alai, I take responsibility. I'm bringing this carbon oil, and then you took this animal, the stolen animal, and you said, okay, this is what I'm going to use as to fulfill my neder. But Rab Shimon said, we learned a few days ago, he says, Davar hagoyim lemamen kimamendami. If I lose this animal, then I have to find another animal. I have to spend money. So this animal already, I have ownership on it. I have a modicum of ownership on this animal because it's saving me all this extra money as long as this animal is around. And therefore, it's not a real mechira. It's not a full mechira. If I lose this, no. Not at all. What if I lose this animal and I made a promise I'm going to bring it? I got to buy a new one, so I'm going to spend new money. It's not spend more money. So
like a stock, something that represents money. Someone is mechayev himself.
That's also if I. That's also if this status is if I lose it, I have to then spend new money. Whatever it is, that's called double. Let's say, so that's more a mazik. That's a mazik. That's got me. That's more of a mazik, and that's something which represents value. Here we're saying is that if I lose this, I got to spend new money. So that spending new money is called double in the moment. Actually, there's a beautiful Pnei issue on this, whether if the animal's still around, is only once you lose the animal, or even while the animal's around, is considered double in the moment. Because when the animal's around, there's no money or anything else. They're here to take the animal. So when an animal, something happens to the animal, that comes suddenly a dobra going in the moment. But anyway, the point is, but now this is very interesting. You have to cut with a final knife. So on the one hand, we say it's not a mechira, it's still retained ownership by the ganav, because if he loses animal, got to spend new money. On the other hand, when he shechts this animal, we say, oh no, it wasn't his, it was Hegdish's animal. So as far as tzricha is concerned, it's sort of in between. It's in between. It's already Hegdish's, but I also have a certain ownership in it. So as far as Mechida is concerned, it never completely left my Rishus. In order for Mechida to be, because Mechida has to completely leave the owner. If I'm still in there, I never really sold it. But as far as Tzricha Mechida is, you have to shecht something completely yours, but it wasn't completely mine. It's already part Hegdish, right? Because I already matish it. So therefore, Tzricha Mechida is we treat it Hegdish. Mechira we treat it as if it still didn't leave my rishis yet. Very fine line over here. Yeah. Okay, and let's continue. Yeah. What's good? Studying more, how can it be Rab Shimon? To say for Rab Shimon, the next line in the mission is that Shimon says, Kachim Shim Chai Bachrius, and so on and so forth. So how can the line before the roast be Rab Shimon? The Sefer Rab Shimon, Rab Shimon. Can't tell me it's Rab Shimon. So you're mostly right. You know who the author of our mission is? The first part, big Kachim Kal. We're not talking about Kachim. We're not talking about karbanas like an oiler. That's what we thought we were talking about. Or talking about a carbon, chatas. We are talking about like a carbon shlamim or a carbon taida. And a carbon shlamim, the owner eats the majority of it. So therefore, Abiyeh Sagud's opinion, that kochim kalim is considered mammon bailim. If you took an animal, you set it aside for shlamim or taida, he says that it's still yours. Not because davar going in the moment, because it's kosher kalam, and then you also can get most of it, so it's still yours. So therefore, you didn't sell it. It's not like you sold it. That's why it's not mechira. On the other hand, since now it's hegdish, if you shecht it, whose animal did you shecht? Hegdishes, because there was hegdishes. Uve shusikaim is his, but it's still yours. Now, why is it considered as far as tricha? Because there was a shini Hashem here, as we'll see. There's a shini Hashem, the name changed. Before it was called chulin, and now it's called hegdish. And remember, we had before. We introduced the idea. Rabbi Yosef introduced the idea that Shini Hashem ke Shini Maisalam. Initially, Gemara only knew about Shini Rishus, Shini Maisa. Came along Rabbi Yosef and added Shini Hashem as well. So as far as Tricha is concerned, this animal is no longer considered Reuben's animal. Now it's Hegish's animal. So you didn't shech the Reuben's animal. But as far as Mechida is concerned, since Kachim Kalin still belongs to me, so the Ganef you set it aside. Therefore, he didn't really give it completely over the Hegish yet. But there was a name change. Okay. Says Gemara further. So what are you telling me? About kosher? You tell me what would Mishnah hold if it was kosher? That completely went over to Hegish. If I would have shechted, if the Ganef would have shechted it, the Taka would be potter because it belongs. Sorry, kosher. It sounds from here. The only reason why he's potter is because it's kosher kalim. And therefore, sorry, the only reason why it's not considered a mechira is because of kachim kalam. What would be kachim? You completely transferred it to ownership of the Beis Hamikdash. We would say it's tantamount to selling it, right? Because you gave it over completely Beis Hamikdash as kachim, and you've not. And we're not talking about the case you said had a lie, or we're not talking Kord Rav Shimon. So because what? So the question like this. Kochim Kalim, because it belongs to the guy who donated it. Okay, still his Abu Kochim, my Mishal, but Kochim, you for the Etzeminian, you made it. Forget about the Tvicha later. The stage before that, the fact that you transferred ownership to the Hegish, that's already tantamount to selling it. And therefore, it's one of the options of Bechari, and therefore you So why, as a Tony, why do we have to make a contract, draw a contrast when you made it Hegish? That it's the first Mishnah, not the Mishnah we just learned, but the Mishnah a few days ago, where it says, Gonaf, you stole it, the Tavai Shechter, and then you consecrated Akahidish. There we say, well, at the time when you shechted it, it was completely yours and you pay 4 or 5 times. Doesn't matter who owns it now. Hey, why do you have to make a difference when you made it Hegdish? Talk about Hegdish the same way, but make a difference whether it's Kachim or Kachim Kalim. You made it Kachim. You said this animal I'm consecrating to be a carbon oil. It belongs completely based on Hegdish. That's a sale. You're paying for that 4 or 5 times. If I'm saying it'll be a carbon toidu or a carbon shlamim, then that's not a sale. Kachim Kalim still belongs to me, and therefore I'm not chayiv. Make that contrast. Leave like we listen by the day. Within this very case, you made it Hegdish first. When do we say you don't have to pay for the transfer of the Hegdish, the Kachim Kalim, because you still retain ownership of like Lily? But the Kachim, Mishal, because you transferred the full ownership to Hegdish. So you're right. Really, I ask a question. So the transfer of Kedush, when you made it Hegdish, isn't that in itself already a sale? With the kashalach mali mochel hedge mali mochel shmai. What's the chiluk if you sell it to a hedge, you sell it to a hedge? Mochel hedge, no. When he sells to a hedge, mi kora toilet Reuven v'hasha toilet Shimon. When you sell it to a hedge, before it was known as Reuven's cow, and now it's Shimon's cow. But mochel shemayim. So in other words, there was a shini Hashem as far as the ownership is. But mochel shemayim. But when you made it hegdish, what did we say? Originally, it was Toyed Reuven. It was the cow, it was the ox of Reuven. And then we say, Vahasha, now we say Toyed. It's Reuven's cow that has to be brought to the base of Mikdash. It wasn't really a name change as far as that is concerned. So therefore, we say, because it wasn't really a name change, Kotche is not really a name change. So Taisus makes a distinction between Kotche Bedekabayis and Kotche. By Kotche, even when you made it Hegdish, we still call it Reuven's cow. It's still called Reuven by the original owner's name, so therefore it's not really a Shini Hashem. But when you give to the Bedek Habayis, it now belongs to the Beis Hamikdash. Now it's no longer Reuven's, whatever it is he donated. It's now the Beis Hamikdash's donation, and therefore it's not really considered. That would be considered as a transfer. Other Rishonim argue. They say no, because the din is that if you want to redeem back from Kotche, if you donate to the Bedek Habayis and you want to renew back, you have to pay an extra fifth. So it's Zaraya that your name is still on there. Because if your name is still no longer on there, then what's you, the original owner, or anybody else? You have no shaykhs anymore. What about a guy who owned it 4 times ago and sold it to 3 other people? What he doesn't pay the extra fifth. It's only the last person. is that right? The last person has still so there's much like. Anyway, let's continue. Said Rav Shimon, the Mishnah said, Rav Shimon said, Amri, Rav Shimon said what? That if kachim, that you chayiv ba'achrayiv, if kachim that you take responsibility for, then he says it's like it's yours. You pay dollar b'hei. And kachim that you don't take responsibility for, it's no longer mine. I don't have to pay the dollar b'hei. Says the Gemara. Amri, we say nihi the sav Rav Shimon. So Rav Shimon holds mali mochre hedish. So trying to understand Rav Shimon, what's he trying to say? Is he trying to say that if he gave it to the Beis Hamikdash, and he says if you took a chay's responsibility for it, he gave it to the Beis Hamikdash, you now you're still considered the owner, and therefore you have to it's still considered the original owners, not the Beis Hamikdash. Therefore, it's you have to pay dal b'hei. It doesn't make sense. If Rav Shimon does not hold mali mocher shmaim, then if it should be the other way around, and that is follows. Kachim if kachim that you're responsible means you never really transferred ownership, then potter. Why? That katila nothing meshuse. It never left it. You want to right now. We're thinking that he's trying to charge you for the etzim you made a kodesh. You're being charged because you transferred ownership to Beis Hamikdash. So if I took responsibility, I did not transfer ownership to the Beis Hamikdash. Kachim shechayi b'achrus means until I give it physically over to the Beis, it's still mine. So therefore, I did not transfer ownership. We understood that Shimon right now was saying that you're chayi because you transferred by making it hegdish, you transferred ownership. But when only if you took a chayis. If you did not take responsibility, then you don't have to pay the dal b'hei for that transfer. The way around. If you took responsibility, that means you did not really transfer it yet to the Beis Hamikdash because I'm still fully responsible. If I gave for transfer properly, why am I responsible? It's only when I'm not taking responsibility that means what am I saying? It's yours, no longer mine. So that's when you should be chayiv for mechira.
Well, if I took responsibility for it, it's not mine because if it was mine and I lost it, I would just say, okay, maybe I don't care about it anymore. The fact that I gave it away, it's not mine, and it gets lost. Now I've taken
We had the same thing about chametz. Remember, if you are minding a goy's chametz in your house, but you take full responsibility for it, or for somebody else, you take responsibility, then the achrayis makes it mine. Achrayis makes it mine. And in fact, if I remember correctly, the goyim who argue with the Rosh Psachim use this Gemara around here to prove one way or another about if you take a chayz, it's yours. So the Gemara is asking, if I'm taking responsibility, I'm taking responsibility for your thing. Otherwise, so I'm taking responsibility. But even though it's your thing, the fact that I'm taking responsibility means that I'm now balabos till I give it to you. If I don't take responsibility, it means it's yours. Come and get it. Come and get it. That's how we look at it halacha. Even though you have a swara there, but that's how we look at halacha. Says the Gemara. It's still never because I was original owner in this case in Nachmed. Then it never really left my control. Or I mean, as if I completely transferred it to Hegdish, then I should be then chayiv the mafka meshus. That in itself is like selling it, and I should be chayiv. I'm right. We misunderstood Rav Shimon. Rav Shimon Amilsa Achritakai is not referring to the case of the Etzim Inyan making it Hegish. He's talking about another matter altogether. And what is that? This is what he's talking about. Ein hagoynev acharaganef. If let's say Shimon steals from Reuben and Levi steals from Shimon, so if Levi steals from Shimon, the Mishal he does not pay dollar behay. Hagoynev acharaganef does not pay dollar behay because he didn't say the possible gunaf mebeisa ish. You stole from the original owner. He didn't. You stole from the Ganef's house. The same thing is goynev hegish mebeis bailim. If you stole an animal that was already kodesh, so the animal already was consecrated by someone else. And you stole it from the original person, based by and potter, you are potter. You stole the original person, you potter. My timer, why are you potter? Because it says a good base Hagish, even though still sitting in the Nignav's house, but because the Nignav consecrated it, so he transferred ownership to the base of Hagish. So I did not steal it from the original from this guy from base Ish. I didn't steal from him. Come along, Rav Shimon says, Coach, it depends. If the original guy, when he consecrated the Nignav, the victim, when he consecrated the animal, took responsibility, it's as if it still belongs to the Nignav. It's as if the Gunaf Beisish, then Chayiv. My timer, Karina Begun Beisish. Even though the Nignav consecrated it, but because the Nignav took responsibility, it's as if it's still his until he physically gives it over. So therefore, if you stole it from the Nignav's house, as if you stole directly from the Nignav, and you have to pay. But if the negative did not take responsibility, then it belongs already to Hegdish. It's no longer a good basish pater. The Lekirin be good basish. That's how we understand Reb Shimon. Says the Gemara, Mechdi Shamin Reb Shimon. We learned a few days ago. Reb Shimon holds the Amar. He says Shchita she'eino ruya lo yishma shchita. Reb Shimon says that if you shechted the animal, it turned out to be treif. You don't pay 4 or 5 times. Why? Because the shchita wasn't effective. Or chulim bazar, the same thing. It's not effective. So too, if you shechted the animal outside of the base of Mikdash, that's called shchutikutz. And who can eat from it? Nobody. So it's a shchita sheneruya. Why are you a chayv? If you're telling me now, we're talking about that I shechted the animal, whichever case it is, I stole from the nigniv, and I went ahead, either I made hegdish, but I shechted. If I shechted the animal, if I didn't take a chayis, I'm not chayiv for the etz. Right? We're talking about if the original guy did not take a chayis, I don't have to pay for the. It's already hegdish. If it's already hegdish, all the ganav is doing now is it's a tavach. He shechted. So if he shechted it, why would Reb Shimon say you're chayiv? That's the case you're talking about here. It was a really kodesh animal. Why would it be chayiv? It's a shchita sheneruya because you shech something outside the base of mikdash. You can't eat from it. So Gemara says here. When Avdimi came along, is talking about you took that stolen animal, the original guy made a kodesh, you took that animal and you brought it to the base of Mikdash and they shechted. So there's no shchuti chutz anymore. There's no shchuti chutz anymore. And therefore, if you shechted now, you have to pay dalad v'hei, right? Because it says if the guy took a chrayis, you have to pay dalad v'hei. So l'chayda, why are you paying dalad v'hei? Because it's not shchuti chutz. Why is it shchuti chutz? Because the ganav took that animal, the whatever the animal was, brought it to the base of Mikdash, and he brought it up as a carbon. L'shem bailim, he did it for the shem bailim. Yeah, he did. Okay, because he did it l'shem bailim anything else, so therefore he shechted something here that is not shchuti chutz, and the bailim took a what do you call it? And therefore he's chayiv because the bailim took a chayiv, so it's still considered the bailims, and you shechted your chayiv. But it makes no difference. We're talking about Shimon now. He doesn't agree. So he's like, it makes no difference. We're talking about if the guy took a chayis, the original guy who made it. He said, taking a chayis, so it still belongs to the original guy. So when I shechted it, when I got it, well, I'm not kind of, when I got it, I'm shechted. When we shechted in the base Hamikdash, we shechted that guy's animal, right? So I have to pay the dollar the hay. And shchut is not from shchut. The original, if it wasn't, what do you mean? Then shchut in if you shechted the animal not l'shem bailim, that you can't eat from it, it's a shchita sheneruya, right? If it's a shchita, if you take a chatz, for example, that's exactly what it said. That otherwise you wouldn't be paying. The only reason why you pay 4 or 5 times is the kind of shimon. It has to be a proper shchita. I'll tell you what happened there. It says that the original guy who made the animal kodesh, not the ganav. The back. Because the guy that made it would be a shinu, that would be mechira. So how do we get the tzricha as mechira? So his original bailim made it kodesh. And so why am I chayiv? Because I shechted it, but I didn't shecht it. It belonged to Hegdish. I didn't shecht it from the original buyer. No, the guy took a chayis. The original guy took a chayis that caused my animal wasn't properly done. I'm responsible. So it still belongs to the original guy. So I stole it from the original guy, and now what am I chayiv? Well, I'm not chayiv for selling, transferring. He transferred it. I'm chayiv for shchita. But when am I chayiv for shchita? It has to be 2 conditions. It has to belong to the original guy, and it has to be a shchita ruya. When is it a shchita ruya? If you shechted and had him in mind in the base of English. So that's what happened here. Yeah, why not? It's your carbon, and I brought it for you. What's the problem? I don't bring anybody. The guy who's giving
the carbon never had any intention.
It's not here, but
this other fellow would take it from his possession and bring it to the base.
It doesn't matter. But I'm taking your carbon, and I'm telling the Kohen, I'm having my yankel. It's his carbon kata. It's his carbon island. So he fulfilled his promise. He doesn't say he has to physically bring it himself. He's under shliach, and even that is shliach. So that's worth it. Freddy Gemara, I don't understand that. By the chazak kedel bailim. In that case, there, if he brought the carbon up for the original owner, then he gave it back. It's as if what's a chilik? Since the guy originally made it hegdish anyway, so you did him a favor. You brought the hegdish. So what's going on here? What payment do you have to make here? You're saying it's a proper shchita ruya. So the guy's yoitzi with his carbon. It's as if I gave it back to him. So what's going on here? And Nachman, we're looking at Zachem if loy lishman, it's still you're still yaitze, it's still a valid, still shchita ruya. So the Gemara, yeah. The problem was that you shechted the carbon, but the carbon couldn't be brought up because the blood spilled out afterwards. So on the one hand, is a shchita ruya. At the time of the shchita was a valid shchita, so therefore you're chayiv dal v'hei. But you didn't return it to him because the blood spilled out. But remember, the main part of a carbon is the sprinkling the blood on the mizbeach. So he wasn't yaitzer with his carbon because the blood spilled out. So as far as he's concerned, you never give it back to me. But as far as the ganav is concerned, it was a shchita ruya because at the moment of shechting, it was good. Kiyasa Ravin another answer. The Sheikhet Mimim Bifnim, you shechted inside, but Shaloi L'Shem Baili. What happened was you didn't have in mind the original guy. So as far as the Shechit is concerned, it's a kosher carbon. But may had the first mission as well there, but Shaloi. So as far as the owner is concerned, he still has to bring another carbon because I'm not yet to this carbon. But as far as eating the animal, you could because it was done properly. So it's a Shechit but the guy didn't get his animal back. So two answers, both of them saying it was done inside the base of Mikdash, but we're trying to find cases where it's a proper shchita, but you never returned it, either because the blood spilled out or because you didn't do lushman. The Shlaki says it's talking about b'shoichet bali mumin. It's talking about you did it b'chutz, but in a way that you're allowed to. How are you allowed to? It was it already had a mum, and because it already had a mum, so therefore, what's it in by a mum? You can redeem it. Once an animal has a carbon has a mum, what do you do with it? You redeem it, you let it wander about till it gets a mum, whatever it is, and then you redeem it. Or this animal chatzil had a mum, you redeem it. And once you redeem it, you can eat it. Tizbach, or whatever we said, you're not supposed to work with it, you're not supposed to share the wool, but what do you do with it? Eat it. Says the Gemara, Toy, but Rabbi Yechon, I don't understand these answers. Number one is shchita materes. Is it shchita that's materit? And therefore what? You're telling me the answer was he shechted, the animals all right, and the blood spilled out. No, the shechita itself is not all right until you sprinkle the blood, because a carbon, the shechita is just like a precursor to the main part. The main activity is the zrika. So what are you telling me that it was a shchita ruya? You tell me it's a shchita ruya because when you shechted it, there was still blood available. So what is blood available? But you didn't spray it yet. You have to wait till you spray it. And since it turned out the blood spilled out, it was never a shchita, proper shchita. What's the value of the shchita? Question number one. And the Shlakish who says that you structured it outside. The shechita is good. It's the padiyah when you go ahead and you paid it, that's when it becomes mutter. But the shechita itself is not the ruya. In other words, after you shechted it, you go ahead and you redeemed it. Right? So at the time of the shechita, it was not ruya till you redeemed it. Says the Gemara, Ishtamite, you totally forgot how did Rab Shimon, remember we're following Rab Shimon here. And you know what Rab Shimon says? When you shechted the animal, since the blood was ready to be sprayed, as if it was already sprayed, so the shechit itself was ruya. And also the chala oimed lived as kippah dummy. In Reish Lakish's case, when you shechted the animal, you were going to redeem it. So therefore, it's as if it's redeemed already. So the shechit itself is row. The shechit itself was row. And so the potential to happen is as if it already happened. Exactly. And we're talking about an animal that was already a mum from the outset. If the animal is a mum from the outset, so then it's always ready after you shechted it, you can go ahead and redeem it, even though you didn't redeem it beforehand. But if the animal was a proper carbon and then it contracted a mum afterwards, then the only way, the Shlokish says, the only way that you can redeem an animal is while the animal's alive. Because it says you need hamoda v'haracha. You have to assess the animal and anything else. And v'hemid v'herech hakoyin. So, but if the animal is geshachten, it's no longer oimid livdays. Because so must be talking about here, as Rashi explains and takes one answer. Must be talking about that the animal was a mum from the beginning. Bottom line is that this at the moment of shchit, the animal was suitable because it already had a potential either for the blood to be sprinkled on the bech or it had a potential to be redeemed. How do I know that Shimon holds? That says the Gemara. How do I know that? The time lived in the Bryce. Shimon says, yes, noisa, you can have an instance of noisa left over of a carbon. Now we know once the carbon is left over, you can't eat from it anymore. And in order, we know that Shimon is of the opinion that something which you not only cannot eat, but you cannot have any enough from, no longer generates any tumor. Because it says in the pasuk, as long as you can eat it or have hana from it, by giving other people to eat it, or even to a guy, it's called food. and therefore it spreads tumah. But he says, if there was a moment that this thing could have been eaten or could have had a no, and then something happened and changed the circumstances, it already had a chalois of that role to become tamei, and therefore it generates tumah. So now he says it. Yes, noisa, sometimes noisa shumetame tumah zoichun can be metame tumah of food. The yesh noisa she'ena metame tumah zoichun. Sometimes noisa has no capacity to metame anything. And how's it work? Ketzak. Long leaf nezika. Let's say you said anything else and you shechted it and then you didn't spray it till the following day, so therefore the animal becomes possible. There was never a moment that the animal was mutabah no, because cold man you don't sprinkle it, you can't have any. Eina metame tumah zoichun. So therefore it never had a chance to become. So it became nicer before even there was a minute that the animal was raw for anything, because he didn't spray the blood till the following day, which is too late. It was lean already. But la'achazika, you shechted, you sprayed it, and then became nicer afterwards. You know, it stayed overnight, whatever. It shouldn't have a titus day and night, then stayed in the following morning. Then, since it was raw, there was a time that it was raw. It can't be metame tumah zoichun. And then we explained my lifnei zrika. What do you mean before zrika? So what does that do with potential? You actually did spray the blood. So we said no. We learned my lifnei zrika. You know what it means when you say that if it was it stayed overnight before you sprayed it, there wasn't a moment potential. How could there be not a moment of potential to spray? We'll see in a minute. And la'achazrika does not mean after you physically sprinkle the blood. It means even la'achashanidazika, even if you didn't sprinkle the blood. If it could have been sprinkled, it's as if the animal already was raw to be eaten, raw to have, suitable to have a no, and therefore if you left it overnight, it generates tumah. And explains. What do you mean that before it was suitable to be sprayed, it already became nicer? Ma'i, what do you mean? It was no time left in the day before Shkia to sprinkle it. The shachte summer shkidachama. You shechted it right before Shkia, and before you shechted it right before Shkia, so therefore it is what do you call it? There was no time to sprinkle it, and there's no time to sprinkle it. The animal never had a moment, never had a shasa kosher. It was never suitable at all to be eaten or to have any pleasure from it. Therefore, so we see all we look at, focus on, is the potential.
What would you do with it? What do you mean by
So it has to burn it, yeah. And but let's say if you shechted it, and then an hour before Shkia, you could have sprayed it, just got busy, didn't do it. And then it spent overnight there waiting, became possible, but the animal was suitable. And if it touches food, it becomes
the whole time when you were busy on the phone call.
I guess, yeah. It was time to sprinkle the metame tumah zoichun. Then it generates tumah. But what do we see from here? How do we interpret the Braisa? Alma kala oimid. All we focus on is not whether you actually sprinkle the blood, but whether you have the capacity to sprinkle the blood. Okay, the chalaim would leave this kippah dummy. How do you also know this other rule that if you shechted, you didn't redeem the animal yet, but if it's able to be redeemed, for example, it was a mum from the beginning, from the outset, then it's as if it already was redeemed, and therefore the shechita is considered as if it was a suitable shechita, even though at the time you didn't redeem it yet, and it was a shechita, you shechted it outside. The Tanya we learned. Rav Shimon says, para aduma. A para aduma, where you shecht outside, for the exception, you shecht it outside of the base of English. And metame tumas eichlin. A para aduma in itself can generate tumah. Who eats it? That after you shechted the para aduma, you could have eaten the animal, and therefore it had a time that it could have been kosher. But Amar Shlakish, and it's not finished yet. And Shlakish says, Oimer Hayir Shimon, that what's the Shas HaKosher by a Parah Aduma? You know what the Shas HaKosher is? Very interesting. That what happens, because normally, once you shech the Parah Aduma, you consecrate a Parah Aduma, how can you eat it? Parah Aduma has to get totally burnt. What do you mean you could have eaten the Parah Aduma? Because Rab Shimon holds that if after you shechted the Parah Aduma, you found a better looking Parah Aduma. I'm not sure what I mean better looking, because there's such criteria. You only have one black, maybe no black hairs. You're allowed to have one black hair. They found one with no black hairs. So then you can drop this one and go ahead and use a better one. And what do you do here? You can redeem this one. So till you burn the animal, there's always a potential to be redeemed, because you might find a better paraduma, even though the likelihood of that happening is extremely rare. You can redeem the para even after you shechted it. Why? If you found a nice one, a better one. So we see that what? Even though you didn't redeem it, it's considered as if the paraduma is food and it generates tumah. Alma, what do we see from here? That anything that's potential to redeem is if it's redeemed. And we'll see you tomorrow, Mr. Shem, the Gemara. Okay.